and we're building bridges between two very important disciplines, medicine and technology. To me, as a doctor, anything which is outside that field is IT. But I'll be a little bit more sophisticated and refer to the non-doctor community as techies and entrepreneurs. So, but I think what I'll try to achieve over here is I'll try to keep it simple. And as doctors, we know our field, and you sure hope and pray that we know what we're doing, right? And so we know what's missing, what are the challenges, and what improvement can happen in our field. But we lack that training to start a business or take an idea from inception to completion, and that's where the two communities, two disciplines can come in together. So for most of us, we just walk this line in parallel, we never intersect. But whenever we intersect the biotech and the medicine field, great things can happen. So with that premise, I would like to introduce our speakers for today. They each have crossed that barrier, each have crossed that line and intersected, and have done good things, or great things. So first one is Dr. Ritu. Dr. Ritu is a pharmacist by training, and she's worked at Roche for around 7 years. And she's the founder and CEO of Genie Life Sciences, which is a drug development company with current focus on developing effective treatment for acute lung injury, which is a significant problem and has a high mortality with no current effective treatment. Our next speaker is, I'm not going to go in order, I'm sorry, so I'm going to skip. So towards the end, Dr. Isha Abdullah. And by the way, in this tech open session, I come with paper and pencil written notes rather than iPad and all that stuff, and that's what doctors do. So there you go, we need your help with that too. I can read it, only I can read it. Yes. True, that's right. So Dr. Isha Abdullah trained in nephrology at Stanford University. She is a successful entrepreneur who crossed that barrier into the world of biotech, and she's the founder of Organi, a molecular diagnostic company which made a big difference in the lives of kidney transplant patients. Dr. Zakia Rahman is a professor in the Department of Dermatology at Stanford University and is on the advisory board of med device companies, which has led to development of 3 laser platforms, and also serves as a subject matter expert for due diligence related to medical device equipment. She also focuses on physician burnout. More to come regarding that. And then we have Tahir Mehmood, a good friend of mine, and he starts talking about stuff which I don't understand, so I'll let him introduce himself.
It's either that or I didn't get my bio to him in time. So I'm a bioengineer by training. I spent my career in small biotech companies as well as large companies, including Amgen. Worked at an aesthetic dermatology company called Clara as one of the early employees. Were acquired by Allergan for a couple of billion. I am now the founder of 2 companies. One is a non-invasive skin genomics and transcriptomics company, which means that we can analyze molecular data from skin for clinical applications as well as consumer use without the requirement of a biopsy, which I think most of us would much rather prefer. I'm also founder and CEO of a biotherapeutics company called Applied Molecular Transport, AMT, where we are addressing, developing solutions, drugs, to address grievous illnesses caused by the malfunction of the immune system by targeting very potent molecules, biopharmaceuticals, to the largest immune organ in the body, which is our gut. So we've raised about $70 million in the last couple of years, and this week are starting our first clinical trial in patients with inflammatory bowel disease.
Great introduction. So with that, I have a long question for you, and I hope you can answer that.
For me?
Yes. How do you see the future of clinical practice? And this kind of helps tie things together, as you mentioned. So how do you see the future of clinical practice in the context of the integration taking place in drug development? biological sciences, genomics, gene sequencing, and data analytics, and the pressure to reduce healthcare costs?
It is a long question. So as an engineer, I like to break things down into various compartments. So let me start with the first. The ability to develop solutions to critical healthcare and medical problems is a multi-modality issue. There's no one way to necessarily go about it as we used to in the old days. So in the case of drug development, the ability to tap into molecular data, to look at gene sequencing, to identify patients, biomarkers, Isha and I were having a conversation about this earlier, being able to really use next generation, use technology, use tech, and the advances in processor design and the speed of computational biology, AI, ML, to, in a real world, actually develop and understand what's going on at a very detailed level can allow us to not only identify the right patients, but also to improve the chronic long-term treatment of individuals, both from the patient perspective as well as from a provider and the payer perspective. Because if you can put the patient on the right drug the first time round and avoid going through cycling, I come from an autoimmune world. I can speak to it. Patients who are diagnosed with various autoimmune diseases are typically put on one of the anti-TNFs, which many of you might be familiar with. And they keep cycling through, and in many cases, up to certain indications, up to 80% of the patients will not respond to those. So these poor patients are languishing for about 2-3 years before they actually get the right drug that hits the right pathway. But by then, other damage has been caused, and these are $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year drugs. So being able to integrate a more holistic solution has not only the potential, but it's actually demonstrated not only to be better for the patient, but better for the system in general, especially given pressures both in this country and certainly outside in Europe and elsewhere, where the cost of healthcare have to go down.
Okay. So how, I guess if we put it in simple terms, how do you build that bridge as a physician? Let's say I have an idea, I see these patients, and I want to interact, I want to move this forward. So that would be, I guess, the theme of today as to how do you move things forward. Let's say if I'm proposing this to a business executive or an enterprise along those lines.
So you have a couple of options. I mean, you can either go to people who are doing this now. So you could go to the larger companies. Many of the large companies that develop, excuse me, the diagnostic side or the drug side, they all have clinical advisory boards, and they look to clinicians for advice, because you're the front line, right? I mean, you're the ones you're prescribing drugs and therapies for people, and that'll impact their lives. And so you could either talk to them or come to the startup world, come to people like us and say, hey, I've got an idea. I haven't seen anything out there. What do you think? You say, am I crazy, or does this work?
There you go. So you're a contact person for any questions regarding that. All right.
That was a good one.
Dr. Ritu, so you founded this company, Genie Life Sciences. You're working in these rare diseases, trying to move treatment, accelerate, I think, the development of drugs so that you can impact lots of lives for a disease, for especially acute lung injury, where there's no effective treatment right now. So how can you use some of the lessons learned from the tech industry to innovate healthcare?
That's a great question. So the tech industry has had so many innovations, so many disruptions. What happened to our industry? What happened to healthcare? So as you know, I was just thinking of the disruptions, Moore's law, right? Every 2 years you see an improvement in speed and a decrease in cost, for example. The human genome sequence, as you know, when this was the year 2000, it cost billions of dollars to 13 years to sequence the genome. Now you can sequence the genome in a couple of days and less than $100 to $200. So there's been a lot of innovation. What about healthcare? What happened to the pharmaceutical industry? So a little bit about my background. So I've been an R&D leader, as you said, for the last 20 plus years. I've worked in big pharma, small pharma. I've taken molecules from a test tube all the way to FDA approval. I've done that 3 times. But for 20 years, I've only had 3 successes. So in general, unfortunately, that's the problem. It takes greater than 15 years, billions of dollars to get a drug to the market. On top of that, only 1 in 10 makes it from the animal testing phase to an FDA approval. That's how bad, that's how long it takes. So GD Life Sciences is trying to disrupt that. We formed the company saying, okay, we have to do something different. We have to get these drugs to the patient. There's so many unmet medical needs that you guys have. How do you get these to the patient as quickly, as cheaply as possible? And the way to do that is look at what incentives are out there. So the FDA has a whole bunch of incentives to work towards what's called rare diseases and neglected diseases. Rare diseases, patients under 200,000 patients in the country, that's how you qualify a rare disease. The FDA gives you 7 years of market exclusivity. They pay for half the cost of the clinical studies. Plus, you don't have to have a huge number of subjects or a huge number of patients to be brought to the market. So we said, okay, let's use that strategy. So we found the technologies. Acute lung injury is one of them. So the drug we're working on is called a P38 kinase inhibitor. It's platform technology. These particular drugs work for a whole bunch of aging and inflammatory conditions. And we chose acute lung injury because it's a huge, devastating problem. It's when your lungs fill with fluid because of some kind of trauma. 40%, 50% people die in this country. In India, Pakistan, China, it's almost 100% mortality. Imagine that. There's nothing to help them. So it's a huge problem that we want to solve. But by getting this drug to the market for this rare disease, it's the first step. It's like the market insertion strategy. Once we get this drug approved for this rare disease, then we go for the larger markets of rheumatoid autoimmune disease and so forth. So it's a strategy. It's a disruption of how we get things to the market as quickly, as cheaply as possible. So our mantra is get drugs to the market 10 times cheaper, twice as fast, and twice as likely to succeed.
I think that's a perfect, ideal situation. I think a lot of other companies should do that because, like you said, FDA takes around 10 years. Although it's changing a little bit with the rare diseases, especially AML, acute leukemia, lymphoma, and all that. But would you be able to tell us a little bit more about how do you convert your product into to a platform technology? How do you? What are the nuts and bolts of the nitty-gritty?
So platform technology is kind of different in the tech world versus the healthcare world. So let me clarify what we mean by platform. So by platform, I mean a particular technology that can be used, for example, for multiple diseases. So that's kind of what we have. We have the selective P38 kinase inhibitors that work for inflammatory diseases like acute lung injury, rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, IBD, type 1 diabetes. They work for aging-related diseases, muscle stem cell regeneration, hearing loss, Alzheimer's, and so forth. So that's the reason we call it platform. So find those kind of technologies. The other kind of technologies, what Dr. Tahir is doing, is find some kind of way to solve a problem in a drug, right? So in your case, you're solving a problem, how does the drug get absorbed to the body, or something like that. Find a technology or find a way to improve the current technology which is applicable on a wide range, and that's how you do it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Moving on, I have so I introduced Dr. Isha Abdullah. I have a very long question for you. I'm sorry. But I think we will, with Dr. Isha Abdullah being a successful entrepreneur and developing technology to help the lives of our kidney transplant patients, which actually detects graft rejection at an earlier stage so that we can implement changes to help prevent rejection, which is a big deal. So what were some of the barriers that you encountered during the transition from medicine to biotech? And with the ever-changing and rapidly evolving environment, what are some of the key elements that determine the success of a biotech adventure?
It's a long question because you're not.
I know you can.
Okay. So I'll address it more with personal experience, okay, which hopefully everybody can find certain points that they would be able to recognize within their own fields. But I think the first thing what physicians, the difference between physicians and entrepreneurs, if you just sit back and think about it, physicians are a self-selected group of people who go into a field where after training, we are made to take the Hippocratic Oath, right? If you look at the elements of the Hippocratic Oath, to this day, after modifications, it was started in, I think, 4 BC. Very little has changed in the sense that the 2 guiding principles are non-maleficence, do no harm, and then that therapeutic nihilance, which is don't do excess, don't do too little. Try to stay in the middle ground, right? So we're talking about safety. We're always talking about doing no harm. Now you look at entrepreneurship and listen to what has just been discussed over here. We're talking about disruption. We're talking about innovation. We're talking about taking risks. So these 2 are actually just constitutionally polar opposites. Okay, so the first thing is that mental thing that we have to overcome, which is that we have a solution that we think is addressing an unmet need. Okay, it is time to actually embrace the innovation and take it to the next step. Now, once that is done, there is this abyss where physicians come from, we're vertical learners. It's a very deeply entrenched field, and there's very little horizontal learning when we're going through medical school. So there's no courses on business, there's no courses on legal aspects, okay? So we actually do not know, we have a great idea, we really don't know how to capitalize or monetize it, right? So that's really what I want to talk about when it comes to bridges. So first and foremost, the 3 things in my mind that take putting together for a successful biotech venture is have a phenomenal idea. Not just a good idea, a phenomenal idea that is going to be really disruptive. Don't start drinking your own Kool-Aid too soon, okay? So that's number 1. The second thing is, from day 1, have a very clear execution plan. It has to be flawlessly executed. Because there are really good ideas, but when the execution fails, that idea just stops, okay? And then the third thing is surround yourself with experts. Just like Tahir said, there are people out there in the industry, know how to find them and reach out to them. So once I think these 3 things have been looked at, then we can go down to, you said, elements of a successful venture. Number 1, we've talked about long return on investment cycles, right? So you're going to be dedicating 10 to 15 years. There is a very high attrition rate. There is an 80% attrition rate within this field. Specifically diagnostics, Ritu was talking about 1 in 10 successes from lab to market acceptance. In diagnostics, the numbers are 1 in 20. So really high attrition rates, which is fantastic because R&D is really where you have to focus. Otherwise, you have what is it? The big company. Okay, that's the elephant in the room. Okay, so we have a Theranos on our hands. So let's first of all invest in R&D. Second thing I would suggest would be, I was appalled when I started the company. We went through all the processes and so on. When it came time to intellectual property, it is appalling that a university like Stanford, with its OTL office, with 16 patents that we had acquired, how poorly written those patents were. So my suggestion to anybody who's thinking of a startup, think very critically before going into the commercial space, because you have to think of, are the patents actually, first of all, is the idea patentable? Number 2, can you obstruct it? Number 3, is your own revelation going to become prior art against you? So there are so many of those. It took us literally about majority of the funds that we had raised just to clean up our legal portfolio. And then we have to raise funds for operational costs and so on, okay? So that's where the last bit comes in. Be very clear from day 1 what your strategy is going to be. When physicians or scientists become too energetic and very euphoric about their discovery, they want to spin out the company too soon. Big mistake. I think big mistake. Bootstrapping is the key. Use as much non-dilutive funds to develop the product as far as you can. And once you've exhausted that, That's when you start going and raising funds, which are going to be diluted. Second, lots of alliances, So hospitals, biomeds, biotechnology companies, other pharmaceutical companies. So just lots of alliances and geographic alliances as well. They all at the end pan out. And then I think last thing is probably good timing. Serendipity, good timing, luck, all of those also have a big role to play in this. So
that's an excellent description. So, but that also means that that's your full-time job, right? So you can't practice medicine and
absolutely.
venture into that field after hours.
Absolutely. If you're committed,
so.
You're going to give up what you
Because
do.
that's important, exactly. Yeah. So you, that's an excellent description of how it's done. Moving on to the last speaker today, last but not the least. Let me find my pages here. I'm old tech, as you guys know. Okay, there you go. So Dr. Zakia Rahman is as I introduced earlier, professor in the Department of Dermatology at Stanford University. She is on the medical advisory board of a few, actually more than a few, med device companies in laser development, and also focuses on physician burnout. That is very important to me, and I think we should really focus all our energy. If you learn anything today, it's physician burnout should be eliminated. So along those lines, I would have a question for you.
We'll solve it right here.
Yes, please. How will you solve it?
So first I want to say that I'm obviously pro-innovation, but in the spirit of discussion and being a little contrarian, I'm going to burst everyone's bubble and say we have to be very cautious about technology and basically the dark side of it and what can happen. So we, I've heard this many times, and I heard this on the unconscious bias panel today. We have to look at the data. Data is truth. And so this obsession to gather data, guess who are the people who are generating the data, right? Those healthcare providers. And we're changing all of our interaction with our patients from what was relational to transactional. So we're spending only 23% of our time actually interfacing with our patients. And the majority of the time generating this data that we think ultimately will reduce healthcare costs and improve healthcare outcomes, but it's not doing that. It's doing exactly the opposite. So I challenge all of you guys in the room who want to develop technology is, make sure you do it the right way. I heard AI a lot today, right? AI is a great buzzword, but we know in the MIT review a couple of weeks ago, they looked at 2,800 companies in Europe that say they're developing AI, and less than 40% of them actually use AI. So we have to think what that is and not just use buzzwords, because these are really important. And we know 50 to 70% of physicians are burned out, and they leave medicine to do amazing things, which is great, but we still need people to actually take care of patients. And those who don't leave medicine, they have 2 to 4 times the rate of suicide as a general population. So I don't have the solution to burnout, and we can't say EMRs are the only cause. Loss of autonomy, I think, is an important part of it, but I hope that we can have a discussion around this because it is really important.
So I forgot to mention that Dr. Rahman sits on the physician wellness panel at Stanford, and physician burnout is one of her particular interests. And I agree, I think it's not just EMR, although I believe it's mostly EMR.
That's what EMR represents, right?
Yes, exactly.
So it's not just the data, but the fact that EMRs are maximized for medical legal risk and maximizing billing. They have nothing to do with the care of the human being, which is what medicine is.
So that I think I agree. So if someone wants to build a bridge today, physician burnout and tech, that should be the thing. Please go ahead.
I think what you said, Zakia, and what you said, Isha, makes complete sense. Yes, we do have to collect the data. Yes, we have to translate things from the animals to bedside, but how do you do that smartly, right? How do you choose the right technologies to take forward? Where are those unmet medical needs? Not just unmet medical needs, but how do you find the right technologies to take forward? And I think we spent a lot of time, I wanted to talk about that because what happens is that a lot of times, Alzheimer's drugs, for example, the last one is approved 15 years ago. They all work in mice. Alzheimer's has been cured in mice, right? No, but not in humans, right? What I'm saying is they all work really well in animal models, but they don't translate to the clinic. So we need to find diseases, we need to find those animal models that are predictive, find biomarkers, to Tara's point. Find that link, who will respond to your drug, and find that early enough that when you're in the clinical studies, pick those biomarkers, and that's what I think is precision medicine, using another buzzword, but I think that's how you connect the dots. Also talking about patents and reimbursement, right? Make sure that your patents, or everything in our industry is about patents. You find those patents which have good composition of matter, clear reimbursement from Medicare, Medicaid. So all of those things are very important. Finding clear clinical objective endpoints. So in my lifetime, I failed a lot of clinical studies, not because the drug did not work, but the placebo effect was so large. So, for example, if you're measuring pain or you're measuring cognition, memory loss, sometimes the placebo effect is so large. Finding things where the clinical endpoint is so clear. In our case, it's dead, unfortunately. And so those are the kind of things. So use the technology, use the clinical data, use the animal data, but use it in a smart way. I would suggest, and that's going to do it.
Thank you. And so I think the general theme was medicine. We know what we're doing, IT, technology, entrepreneurs, but I think this is a beginning of something great. This is a venture by APNA, All Pakistan Physician North America, and Open. It was the first time that this kind of session has been held. So this is a beginning of something great. I think we should interact more with great ideas which we can throw at each other and work through it. We can each learn from each other's experiences and kind of and move forward. So with that, thank you for, I'm thankful that you all stayed and enjoyed this session. And if there are any questions, please go ahead.
Okay, so when we, I don't need a microphone. So when we set up this session, first of all, thank you for all of you to come here. And thank you to our members, Bilal is there, Clara is there. Thank you for all of you to come. Thank you very much. The purpose of this session really was to bring APNA and Open closer. Because I go to so many of APNA meetings and I really find out that there's no entrepreneurship representation. And we need to do the reverse side. We need to have many open members go to APNA meetings like that. APNA meetings is a very well organized. So my suggestion to all of you guys is that please interact between the medical community and the entrepreneur community. And what we try to do, and we have a committee which is trying to do, is to publish 10 problems. 10 problems that where tech community can help the medical community. I don't know how we come up with those 10 problems. But we have the reason we are trying to do that is because we think it could be a starting point. And it could be as simple as workflow in a physician's office. It could be how you gather data. It is how you do something else. We have 10 people here. So here's my suggestion to all of you guys. If you could make suggestions to 10 problems that bother you the most, that you potentially think has any tech solutions, we'd like to get that list. And we'd like to put some tech entrepreneurs on it and see if we can create some startups to solve those problems.
That's perfect.
So, relating to what Naveed is saying, I think it's very important to not look at subjects like monoliths, but actually go a little deeper into the subject and look at what we call use cases, which are simple transactions that occur. They can occur between two machines, two humans, or a machine and a human. Because once you write that narrative down of the use case, then you can determine how technology is going to enable that use case. Rather than saying, we need more IT in this field, or we need more. Because in some cases, human intelligence rather than artificial intelligence might be the right one. And in others, the use of big data and deep learning, those things can be. But if you don't describe the use case, I can't tell you whether technology will be helpful or not. And that could be the bridge that Naveed is talking about. He refers to it as problems that we want to solve, but they come down to specific transactions.
Can you speak up, please? We can't hear
I think
you.
your mic is off.
Actually, mic is not turned on.
Just for me.
Oh,
How about the rest of us? I like that.
So I'm special, I get 2 mics. So as engineers, we solve problems. Many times when we go to a doctor's office, most of the time the solution that a doctor provides is more like maintaining the situation. Take this tablet, you'll maintain it, you take this tablet further. As engineers, we really don't have any such situation where an engineer is paid to maintain big condition. So a lot of engineers actually are getting frustrated and they're coming into the medical field to try to actually solve some of these problems. And I think the main interest, as Dr. Sharma mentioned, is that we're interested in finding out maybe something simple, something complex, that we can apply our skills to hopefully find a solution that can be great, beginning of a tremendous problem.
That's a good point. Maintaining the disease is job security for us. But I think it's more complex than that. So we obviously want patients to get better and cured of their ailments. But the complexity,
cure the patient.
Yeah, cure the patient, but the complexity of curing, that's not as easy as, so it may look like maintenance, but it's more than that. And that's where the interaction helps, right? We can work through and make a use case and see if we can really solve that problem. So that's where the bridge would be helpful.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Sujan.
I think 2 dimensions got discussed. One was on the tech side and one on the entrepreneur side. Maybe the third dimension of funding, especially on the early stage, more bootstrap. Coming to the digital tech world, we see a lot of angels investing in very, very early stage concepts, forget even products. Does that something, maybe the panel can comment, Isha, you or anybody else can talk about what are some of these sources, if there are, for early stage investing in bio healthcare companies?
Tahir's raised much more money than I.
Yeah. Tahir, go ahead.
Sure. So both my companies were completely bootstrapped when they started off. With AMT, we actually, to go back to what Isha said, we actually had a strategic collaboration with Johnson & Johnson, with Janssen Pharma, who paid us several $1 million. We were the first company. We were the first company to start off at the J&J Innovation Center in South San Francisco. It's called J Labs. So we're the first company in the door there, and that kind of really helps really get the ball rolling, right? So we're not very big. There were just me and my co-founder. We had a small office. They gave us a couple of desks, and we had one bench in a very large room, in a very large lab. But there was probably about $15 million worth of equipment in there that we could use, right? That we did not have to pay for. So that was the path we took to get in there. And then that catapulted us. Once we generated sufficient data, we were then able to do a more traditional Series A venture round, and then did a Series B. But that's the kind of, we did not have any investors, any traditional, any equity investment in our company until we were well underway, until we raised $33 million in our Series A. Now with the other company, it was very different. There we actually went down the angel path, and so MIT Angels, which is an offshoot of the MIT Club in Northern California, they actually funded us primarily, along with some other high net worth individuals. Got us really kind of through that early proof of principle part for the diagnostic technology, and then the company then went out and then did a more traditional round with institutional investors who came in later. So there are lots of opportunities. But I've been in the situation, and it was a struggle. It was not easy to get that, to get that first check in the door. It was not easy. One of the things people talk about is stress of medicine and stress of being a doctor. The entrepreneur's stress is pretty up there as well. I mean, to put things in perspective, my wife, who many of you know, and I had to make a decision at one point where the company had started, and we had been doing this my co-founder and I had been doing this for a while, and then we came to a decision point where our patents needed to be converted. And it was a choice. We were actually about to buy a house. We had a choice. Either buy the house or pay the legal fees to convert those companies. It was actually a little bit more than the down payment of the house, even in the Bay Area, just to put things in perspective. And we made a decision. We said we can always buy a house later. So we actually went the other way. So, you know, these are, and that's before we had any funding. J&J was not anywhere near the picture. So it's not easy. But once you can actually get if you have a strategic plan and you know what you're doing and you understand the industry, and being in a place like this, it's a big network. There's people here you can talk to.
But that's
it's
dedication.
a lot easier to get there.
That's dedication. That's awesome.
So to just add to that, just a little point. When I started off, I was advised by our financial advisors and our boards and so on to have a strategy. Now in retrospect, I wish I had been advised to have multiple strategies. There's a plan A, there's a plan B, there's a plan C. We don't have to go down one if the first one fails. I believe one should try to go down all the paths at the same time. And I specifically give you an example. Most startups they think they're coming from a point of weakness because, well, let's say they're talking to a large pharma. Understand your strength. Right now, 2/3 of, I think, pharmaceutical products as well, but I know for diagnostics it's a fact. 2/3 of diagnostic and about the same number of pharmaceuticals are currently being developed by small startups, not by large pharma. Large pharma is dealing with their problems, which is they have patents that are running out, they have pipeline issues, and so on. Their strength is they have scalability, they have cash available, and they actually have the team available to you. Your strength is you have the product. So it's a great marriage. But when you come from a point of strength and you understand, have a license of, let's say you have a pipeline. We had a pipeline. Know what your crown jewel is. Protect that crown jewel as much as possible. Try to get alliances around the pipeline products so that it gets some cash flow into the company. And meanwhile, keep bolstering your crown jewel to as far as you can. So my take is multiple plans from the get-go so that you can go as far as you can without a venture fund. Angel investment, yes, but once you're getting to Series A, you're talking at big dilutions.
We've run out of time, but if everyone can stick around for 5 more minutes, maybe we can finish up. Okay. Sure. Actually, before this gentleman in the back, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I have a question pertaining to the whole healthcare industry. So within the healthcare industry today in North America, I think we are spending $2.5 trillion or some $2.4 trillion. Doctor and the patients are the core in the whole industry. And instead of them being in the core, they are at the edge. They have no say, none whatsoever. Who has the say? Is the insurance company. So an insurance company, along with the pharma and a politician, these guys are, 3 of them are just playing against us as a patient, you see. When I'm sick, mentally, physically, emotionally, I'm down. I have my insurance company, but I don't even know what I'm covered with and all that nonsense, So unless we make the changes at the core, all these things are very tiny things, And until that happens, I mean, this the healthcare cost is taking us to the bankruptcy. And this is the only country in the world which is ridiculously out of whack here. So this is my statement, my observation, my experience, and we should figure it out a way. How do we overcome that, or how we disrupt that? And I think technology has a way to disrupting the dogmas, as I call it.
Yeah, I think what you're saying about healthcare is it doesn't operate in transparency. You as a patient don't know the cost, we as a physician don't know the cost. And healthcare costs in the United States are doubling every 14 years. And yet our healthcare outcomes are some of the worst in industrialized nations. So I think transparency is an important part of it.
One question I had, I was thing, and that was Apple's contribution to health. And I just feel, there's something there that tech companies are looking with great high confidence in terms of keeping us healthy, whether it's exercise, lifestyle, sleep, and eventually that is going to become an amazing disruption. But I think there's a better opportunity for the medical device companies to recognize this power of technology, because if Tim Cook believes that Apple's long-term future is going to be health, why the medical industry doesn't see that potential?
You have a good point. A lot of focus is currently being put on primary care, and that's where technology can be really helpful in making sure that people are getting reminders for exercise, monitoring their heart rate at home, taking medications, monitoring for side effects at home. All of that can be done with an Apple Watch or an app on your phone. So, but those things can obviously develop, because prevention would be better than cure, and I think a lot of focus needs to be on prevention and primary care, rather than, oh, now I've got stage 4 cancer, and that's where a lot of expenditure is. Some of these medicines are taking up to $1 million per treatment. So yeah, so I think we're done with this session. Any?
One question, please.
One. Okay.
One
Last question.
I'm sure you people are the best and the brightest. The American medical system is considered the most innovative and technologically advanced healthcare system in the world. But for the vast majority of the American population, even in Silicon Valley, most people cannot afford it. If they don't have company provided healthcare, which covers 80% or 50% of it. So what good is all this technology and innovation if the vast majority of the American population cannot buy healthcare on their own? So, your comments?
I think that's a big problem, but the government was trying to solve it. But as far as the premise for this session, I don't know if there's any way we can help with technology.
I think we need a whole medical
I think we need we need to build another bridge. That's a good point, but instead of the techies, we need someone else to build the bridge with.
One point I wanted to make is, I think things will change. I mean, Gavin Newsom is only talking about medicine being priced at the government level. Things will change. In terms of pricing drugs, I think as Tahir was saying, the cost of the drug itself is only 10% of the total healthcare cost. That's important to remember. Also, it should be based on health economics. What are you doing to improve? So in our case, we'll be cutting the number of days in the ICU. And based on that, the pricing of the drug should be made. So it should be all about cost effectiveness and health economics. That's how you price a drug, that's how it gets reimbursed, and that's how you keep the costs low.
That's a great point. So thank you so much. So we'll end the session now. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.